I know who will win at this year's Creator Clash. Well, not exactly, but I have my guesses. First of all, let's look at the fights. There is a lot of them. In order to make the most accurate, best predictions possible, I decided to design a system of sorts, an advanced algorithm, based on my level of confidence to make the best results possible. Now, I know you may not believe me, but I can assure you that this system is fundamental in finding out the objectively correct truth on what will happen, what will take place at this year's Creator Clash. It's organized in a very complex and hard to understand way. At the bottom, there's the fights where I don't know how it'll end up. Likely because there's just not that much footage on the fighters, or maybe I missed it. In the middle, we have the fights where I think I know how it'll end up. I'm not 100% sure, but I got a sliver of confidence. And on the top, we have the ones where I am sure I know what's going to happen, and I can promise you, and I would bet money, which I'm not gonna do. Okay, now that we got that settled, I'm gonna try to speed run the first 2 layers, because I really want to get to the top layer, okay? First fight we got here is Leonhart versus CrankGameplays. And I watched the media workout, but I don't think I saw Leonhart. I definitely saw CrankGameplays though, and he's working very hard, but I do have concerns about his technique. You can see he's kind of wild on the bag. He's kind of chasing the bag, which is something I'll get back to a little later. But I will say I do like his body shots when he was working with his coach. A pretty good thing to have. Next fight we got is Mika versus Alanah Pearce. Now, I might be wrong here, but I don't believe that the live stream was able to capture any footage of them training, so there's nothing really I can work off of. But I could have missed it, and that could be my fault. Moving on to the I think I know tier, we have John Morrison versus Harley Epic Mealtime. First things first, I gotta say, Harley has lost a ton of weight and gained a lot of muscle since the last year's Creator Clash. Is actually crazy. So good on him. I think it's gonna have an impact on the fight. It's gonna be a big deal. But he's going up against John Morrison, a real life Giga Chad. He's a former WWE wrestler. He is fit, he is jacked, he is big, he is muscular, he's all those things. He looks great, but so does Harley. But why am I bringing up physique if their physiques are both great? Well, the thing is, there is an idea in boxing. Not everybody in boxing follows this, and it's much more important, I think, in the lower weight classes. The idea that you can sort of build bodybuilder muscles and not the muscles you want for explosiveness and movement. I think a good example of this is actually Fuzi versus Deji. Fuzi came in looking jacked, looking ripped, and Deji came in looking like Deji. But we all know what happened next. Deji won in dominant fashion, and honestly, I gotta put some of the blame on Fuzi's physique. Clearly, strength training was a major priority of his, but I do believe that the amount of bulkiness he was, even though he looked good, I think it slowed him down. I think it made him stiff, and I think it drained his stamina. So that leads me to have a little bit of concern for John Morrison and Harley Epic Mealtime that they might experience a similar situation. But let's just say hypothetically, they're both experiencing quite a bit of fatigue. So it becomes a sort of war of the wills. Who has what it takes? Who wants it more? But also, who statistically is more likely to win? And honestly, I think that's when we factor in aspects like height. Even though these guys are both heavyweights, Harley is a giant, standing 6 inches taller than John Morrison, even though John Morrison is 6 foot. While some have seen Harley as Creator Clash's very own Tyson Fury, I think perhaps a more appropriate comparison would be to the likes of Deontay Wilder, because I think when push comes to shove and when both men are tired, Harley can very much win this fight if he lands one big punch on a tired John Morrison. That's why I have to give this fight to Harley Epic Mealtime. Alright, next on this list will be a lot quicker. We have IDidAThing versus Fitz. Now, I know IDidAThing was not at the media workout, and I don't believe Fitz was either. So I really have nothing to work on when it comes to guessing what Fitz can do. but I can say this. I think IDidAThing is going to win. He is a beast. He is a scary dude. He's jacked, but he's also athletic. And yes, we all know what he did to Animated James last year. But I also think it's worth noting, this man accidentally punched his friend who was training for a different fight so hard that he gave this man a concussion that this dude had to pull out of the fight. This was during sparring, and he gave this dude a concussion by accident. The next fight we have on our list is Jaelaray versus Abelina Sabrina. And I think this is a pretty interesting matchup. Both fighters are 5'2", so they're equal on paper, but they're different in their training. And I think that kind of difference will show up on fight night. Starting with Sabrina, we can see that she is being taught how to deal with high pressure fighters. It's important to learn the proper footwork with that. And she's also a very big, high-volume puncher. Idubbbz even goes on to say,
Sabrina is like one of the fighters. I sparred Sabrina, and she's one of the few people that naturally has like really high volume.
Now her opponent takes a very different approach. I think I would describe her training as focused on the fundamentals, focused on the technique. Not so much trying to be the fastest, not so much trying to swarm your opponent, but trying to make sure you get the cleanest shots. And I think that's really important when dealing with a high volume, high intensity puncher. Now look, we got to consider this. This is YouTube boxing. These are new boxers. If it gets rough, if it gets into a brawl, then maybe Sabrina's approach will be the best to take. But there's also a possibility that it becomes a boxing match, and that puts Jaelaray's skill set above Sabrina's. On a side note, I noticed on Sabrina's Twitter that she retweeted Bernie and Lula, and that she retweeted Kenneth Mejia, who is this great politician who I've been following since 2018. So on that fact alone, I'm rooting for Sabrina. Like, I want her to win. But as a boxing fan, I gotta keep it real. I gotta keep it 100. You know, if it turns out to be a boxing match, which I think Jaelaray wants it to be, then Jaelaray wins. Period. You know, they say that timing beats speed, and timing also beats volume. Timing also beats power, because if you can time a shot, if you can outbox your opponent, you will win the fight with relative ease. So I gotta bet on Jaelaray. Now we're in the top tier. This is the tier where I feel like I can predict the most accurately. I have the most information to work with, and I feel like I have the most passionate opinions about. So stay tuned, it's gonna get good. Starting off with Froggy Fresh versus Chris Ray Gunn. Honestly, there's not much training footage I can work with when it comes to Chris. I will say, in the very short clip of Chris using the heavy bag, I do like that he used the left hand to set up the right hook. To me, it shows a bit of good fundamentals and an understanding that boxing isn't just throwing punches, but it's using punches to set up the shots that your opponent will not see, but will hurt a hell of a lot more. But perhaps I'm overthinking just a little bit. We do have a lot more footage, though, of Froggy Fresh and his training. Clearly, he's working hard. Obviously, if he wasn't, he wouldn't have a physique like he does. But I do have a lot of concern that he's loading up on shots, which makes it a lot easier for someone to counter. You can see his work on the bag. Clearly, he's working hard. He's pushing. But again, his technique, I think, leaves a bit more to be desired. I think he opens himself up to a lot of counter shots. And sometimes he puts two hands on the, right there, he put two hands on the bag, and he sort of pushed it rather than punched it, which when your two hands are down, that leaves you real open to a counter. It's very dangerous. Don't take this the wrong way, though. I'm not disrespecting. I'm not hating. I'm just saying what I'm seeing. And he's not the only person to sort of use the bag this way. I will explain further. But because of the things I mentioned, if Chris is taking a little bit more of a boxing approach, he clearly has worked on technique the way he was using the bag. If he can use that technique, if he can think like a boxer, He'll be able to see the shots load up. He'll be able to see the shots coming. He'll be able to counter, and that's why I think Chris is going to win. Next fight I want to look at is Aaron Hansen, Egoraptor versus Jarvis Johnson. We actually did get to see both of these guys at the media workout. Let's start with Jarvis. Jarvis isn't looking bad, okay? He's still kind of following the bag, chasing the bag, but ultimately he's doing better than some of the other people we've seen on the bag. But when I was watching this clip, as well as some of the other fighters using the heavy bag, it reminded me of this video from former Unified Welterweight champion Thurman.
But there's a lot of people who are chasing the bag and really getting it to move and sway, and then they move around it like this, and then it's swinging, and then they just push it some more.
What I'm going to teach you today is a boxing drill that I call stop the bag.
What Keith is trying to show here is a drill which focuses on trying to stop the punching bag as it is coming towards you with its momentum, rather than you chasing the bag. This is supposed to improve power, accuracy, technique, as Keith Thurman shows.
When the left hook, you don't land over there. When the left hook's coming, when the bag's coming down, you don't land it right there. When it's coming out, boom, you stop it. Boom, you stop it. Boom, boom, boom. And then back to tapping.
Now, if I, random YouTube guy, were to add upon the information presented by the former Unified Welterweight champ, I would say this: it isn't always about trying to stop the bag. The main thing that I've seen when looking at a ton of different champions, a ton of different of the best fighters in the world, is this consistent theme of working against the bag, fighting the bag, not working for the bag, not chasing the bag, not following the bag, fighting it. You can see it with Manny Pacquiao. When the bag comes in, he comes out, you know? Mike Tyson does a similar thing. Bag comes in, he comes out. Notice how Muhammad Ali attacks the bag when it's coming to him. Anyway, my point is, every fighter, no matter if they're fighting for the Creator Clash or for professional boxing, should probably work on that skill. But I also feel that that skill sort of comes with time, with doing the sport more. The more you're in the sport, the more you do it right, you know? I think a good example of that is actually Aaron Hansen. Let's look at him on the bags. Let's see what happens when the bag swings towards him. Now, it might be a bit more subtle than Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, or Manny Pacquiao, but it's because of the subtlety. It's because Aaron has the over a year of experience. It's because he is showing improvement in the fundamentals that I think Aaron will win this fight, and he's going to look good doing it. Next fight we got is Jack Manifold versus Dakota Olave. So I got to keep it real with you. This was a bit of an accident. I don't really know how this fight's gonna end up. Look, I made my very advanced algorithm at like whatever AM, so excuse the mistakes. But going into it, I don't think we got to see any Jack Manifold footage of him training at the media workout, but we definitely did get to see Dakota. Dakota was actually brought on because he has some previous experience fighting. He fought about a year ago, so you would expect a lot of improvements since his first outing, but I mean, honestly, keeping it real, I'm not 100% sure on that. My theory is that after his first fight, he stayed relatively inactive. He didn't continue boxing training, and you could see that his hooks look sort of short and awkward, almost like a T-Rex throwing hooks. No offense. But I mean, I get why he was brought on, because I have no idea how Jack Manifold's looking. So of course they need a guy with a relatively similar skill set. But honestly, I don't know who's winning that fight. Next fight we got is Myth versus Hundar, and this is one of the most interesting matchups in the whole event. Two guys with fight experience, two guys that have been in big events, Hundar in the previous Creator Clash, Myth in Ludwig's chess boxing, and two guys that won their fights looking good while doing it. But how did each of these guys look during training? Personally, I think they looked good. Starting off with Hundar, he was doing some sparring during the media workout, and it was a very brief little clip, but I think there's some information to get out of it. He was dealing with someone that tried to apply pressure, and he was handling it well. He stayed calm, parried, and responded. Myth, on the other hand, was really able to show off his physical prowess, his technical prowess. I think he's improved since the chess boxing. He is also fighting the bag, going against the bag, rather than following and chasing the bag, which I think is impressive. He also got to show off his skills on S-Fan.
Really good.
But with all this information, who do I think is gonna win? I think that there are, again, two ways this could go. If it becomes a boxing match, a chess match, ironically, I think Hundar wins. If he can stay calm, if he can box with Myth, if Myth gets too overeager and Hundar can counter, if when it gets too intense, Hundar can clinch when he needs to, he can very much win this thing. If Myth wants to win, I think he needs to overwhelm Hundar. There's a big age difference, and I think Myth needs to make that clear, and that's his path to victory, man. How do I think it's gonna go? I think that there will be boxing, and I think Myth will be competitive in the boxing. But if Myth wants to win, he's gonna need to turn up the heat. I think he's willing to do that. He showed himself to be willing to experiment more when he was fighting Churdleys. By the way, a guy who was the headliner for a Misfits boxing event. If Myth is able to do what he did against Churdleys in a more skilled manner, then he will win in my view. But if Hundar can control the fight, then he's gonna win. But I think I'm leaning more towards Myth in this situation. Alright, the next fight we got is Yodeling Haley versus Marisha Ray. And if you thought Aaron Hansen looked a little scary, looked a little crazy, looked like he wanted revenge, looked like he was going to avenge his former loss.
Far better than I saw him last year.
Honestly, Yodeling Haley brings that intensity to a whole nother level. I know that's a short clip, but I can't overstate, bro. The technical improvement is crazy. She looks like somebody that's been doing this for over a year, and she is. She was at last year's Creator Clash. She went toe-to-toe with Minx, who was like double her size, way stronger, but Haley stood her ground. In this pad work, in my opinion, Haley looks stronger, faster, and most importantly, more accurate than ever before. So keeping it real, her opponent is in danger. But look, this is boxing. You never know what you're gonna get. Her opponent is putting in the work. She was shown in the media workout doing some bag work. And like some of the other newer fighters, is sort of following the bag in my opinion, rather than fighting against the bag. When it comes to my predictions, I think I gotta give this one to Haley. I think she's coming in looking to avenge a loss. She's more motivated than ever, and she's gonna crush it. Next fight on the itinerary is Dad versus AB. This is one of the fights I am most excited for because both of these guys shown exceptional skill. Dad is so physically fit that Joe Rogan thought he was taking testosterone. He knocked out Matt Watson before my friends could even sit in their seats at the Creator Clash Live. Dad is the real deal, bro. AB, on the other hand, was underestimated. People looked over him because his opponent looked scarier than him. But AB didn't run, he didn't quit, he didn't leave, he did the fight. Him and Hundar made it one of the most technical fights of the night. Hundar knocked down AB, AB responded by knocking him down back. Even though I think most people agree Hundar was winning that fight, AB fought like crazy. He did not quit. And he is going to bring that same heart, that same intensity into the fight with Dad. I would also assume he's coming in more skilled. There isn't much to talk about in the footage from the media workout. B is training with the same trainer he had from last year, who I believe trains at Wildcard Boxing Gym, the same gym owned by Freddie Roach. A ton of champions came out of that gym, including Manny Pacquiao. Could see him working the jab, but otherwise they really didn't show much. I'm sure that was a purposeful decision. On Dad's end, we don't have a ton of videos and footage to work with, but we do have a few. First of all, I want to show some footage of Dad boxing from last year, shadow boxing. That was before the weigh-in last year, and they were trying to get his weight down to 160. You can see based on that footage that at the time, yes, this was a guy that was new to the sport of boxing. But that was the same guy that could knock out Matt Watson. Lucky for us, Dad has posted some newer footage of him using the bags, so we can kind of get a better picture of where his technique currently is. This is a major improvement from the previous year, guys. And he's perhaps doing the perfect example of what I was talking about earlier. Fighting against the bag, not following the bag, not chasing the bag. hitting it at the perfect time as the momentum is coming towards you, okay? This shows me that he has not stopped punching as he says. Not only that, I feel like he's developed his power further. It makes sense. He's already physically strong. He's jacked. Even at 41 years old, if he's improving that power, if he's improving that technique, he is a danger to anybody. Honestly, you could literally just ask S-Fan and he'll tell you how good Dad is. So what does each guy need to do to win? Well, I think AB has to employ a strategy similar to what Hundar has to do. He has a more intense, a more extreme, a more crazy kind of guy. A guy that's more willing to do things that will be kind of risky but very effective. Dude that will be willing to swing. Myth and Dad are very similar in that sense. What AB needs to do is outbox Dad. Get Dad out of his rhythm and don't let him get into a rhythm. Otherwise, he's gonna end up like Matt Watson. What Dad needs to do is somewhat similar but also very different. He needs to interrupt AB. He needs to prevent AB from getting in the zone. He needs to actually intimidate AB. Get a good punch in round one. Make AB respect that power. Get AB afraid to throw, which is going to be hard to do because AB has heart. But when you get someone that has a little too much heart, sometimes they put themselves in situations where they can get knocked out because they're too eager. Will AB's indestructible determination come out on top, or will Dad crush the pretty boy of the H3 podcast? We shall see. But I gotta be honest, if I were a betting man, I'd bet on Dad. And now we got our main event of the evening, Idubbbz versus Alex WASSABI. This is a really good fight, folks. You got two guys moving down in weight, similar heights. Both, in my view, proved themselves to be very interested and invested in the sport of boxing. Alex WASSABI faced a hostile crowd in the UK, fighting one of the UK's biggest stars, Deji, beating him in his own backyard and still never getting the credit that he deserves. While Idubbbz went up nearly 40 pounds, I think, to fight Dr. Mike, a bigger guy, a longer guy. He didn't win, but it was just like Rocky won. He won in the hearts of the viewers, live or pay-per-view. He showed himself to have a granite chin, never going down once, and an indomitable will. So which one of these guys has what it takes to win? I think there's a lot of outcomes that could come out of this fight. First of all, it's hard for me to imagine either of these guys knocking each other out, not because they don't want to, but because they're so skilled. Like I said before, Idubbbz has a chin made out of granite, but also probably cement and steel too. He fought Dr. Mike, a guy naturally bigger than him, and he stood his ground. He did not get knocked out. He did not get knocked down, even after taking many shots. It's hard for me also to imagine Alex WASSABI getting knocked out, because I think he's gonna be too defensively smarter than even Dr. Mike to get hit with a shot that would KO him. Now, he could get knocked down, he could get stunned, this all could happen, but I also think this is a guy with heart and determination, just like AB, and even if that takes place, he's gonna come back ready to fight, you know? Let's start with Alex WASSABI. You're judging his skill set exclusively by how he looked against Deji. Even though he won, he looked like he was chasing Deji. He looked like he was kind of struggling a bit with the defensive nature of Deji. But ultimately, he outworked him. But I don't believe for a second that the Alex WASSABI that we saw face off against Deji is the same Alex WASSABI that we're going to see face off against Idubbbz. Because look, we got to remember, even though Alex did not fight KSI, he still practically had a full training camp in preparation. So since he fought Deji, he had one training camp for Deji, one training camp for KSI, and now he's getting one training camp for Idubbbz. So he may have only showed up and fought once, but he's been fighting behind the scenes ever since. When you look at his footage, you see a guy punching those pads cleaner than most in the entire YouTube boxing space. This man is on a certain level, and I think Idubbbz is also on that level, which is going to make this such a good fight. The footage we've seen from Idubbbz shows a better Idubbbz, in my opinion. One who's keeping his hands up, emphasizing a defense which I feel like he lacked, with better head movement, counter punching. his punches look clean. It's technically sound, you know? He may not have had the same amount of training camps as Alex WASSABI, but throughout the last year, I assume he's been losing the weight that he gained for Dr. Mike. I don't doubt that he's still been working on himself, trying to get better in a technical sense. And now that he is in his natural weight class, same with Alex WASSABI, I think both guys' punches are going to hurt a lot more than when they were fighting at weight classes above where they should be. I also want to add, last year when I watched the Creator Clash, I remember, I don't think a lot of people were talking about this, but I noticed it. Idubbbz works that body, bro. And now you're going to see Idubbbz at his natural weight class fighting a guy that's also a 160-pound guy, getting those body shots with more skill and maybe technically less power, but relative power for that weight class. I think he's going to hit harder than he ever did. So how does each guy win this fight? Idubbbz needs to make it rough. Idubbbz needs to be tough. He needs to get on the inside. He needs to work Alex's body. And then when Alex is focused on the pain that's in his body, he needs to head upstairs and smack him in the face. And it'll be there, the shot that Alex doesn't see, where Alex actually gets hurt. On Alex's end, he needs to prevent that from happening by outboxing Idubbbz, being too technically sound for Idubbbz to handle. He needs to make Idubbbz throw and miss. And when that happens, when he overextends, then you hit him with something big. So who do I think will win? I genuinely don't know. I see both of these guys as ready and willing to put in the work necessary to win. Both of these guys have skills that the other doesn't. They're both fighting at a more appropriate weight class for each of them. And they're definitely gonna give a good show. But can Alex WASSABI actually handle a fighter that will apply pressure unlike Deji? And can Idubbbz handle someone that will fight as smart as Alex WASSABI? I only know for sure that it's gonna be an exciting night of boxing, and I'm looking forward to April 15th. I want to bring it full circle and ask you, who do you think will win this year's Creator Clash?